Hi, my name's Philip Stott. I'm the member of the steering committee of the Scottish Trade Unionist and Socialist Coalition, Scottish TUSC. Scottish TUSC has been over the last couple of months preparing our election challenge for the May Scottish Parliament elections. And I'm here today with Brian Smith, who's also a member of the steering committee and a leading trade unionist in Glasgow. Brian, we've got a couple of meetings next week to advance the plans to stand in the elections in May. Why should people come to the Scottish TUSC meetings?
Hi, Philip, thanks. Yeah, I mean, it's an important time to be involved in politics. It's an important time to get involved in fighting for a better society, criticising the economic system we've got at the minute, which isn't working, obviously, for the mass of people. Poverty increasing, inequality increasing, low pay, people losing their jobs, unemployment, climate change, racism, all the consequences of the capitalist system, which we need to fight as working class people and as socialists and as trade unionists. And the meetings next week are a small step in that fight to try and put together an election coalition for the Scottish Parliament elections in May. TUSC is an initiative to try and build a new working class party because it's desperately needed for workers and working class people in this city, in Scotland, and indeed across the UK. And TUSC is just a small step we see in trying to build that. But it's important that we keep the flag of socialism flying at the minute. It's the solution, as far as we are concerned, to the horrors that we face across the world and the issues that we have locally in relation to council cuts to services in the health service and COVID has then exposed, if it was needing exposed, the shocking system that we live in and the inequalities that's bringing. And as a number of people have said, COVID has put people in the same storm, but we certainly weren't on the same boat in terms of how we could respond to it. And we think that it's a system change that's required. COVID has highlighted the issues of public ownership, about why it's more efficient for resources, it's better for the frontline service delivery, and indeed it protects people's health more if you have public ownership with democratic planning. And that's just a very small example within the health service in relation to PPE, provision of testing, provision of the vaccines, whatever you'd want to highlight there. And that's one example of public ownership. But we argue for more than that. We argue that there needs to be a fundamental change, that society needs to have control of the banks, of the finance companies, of the oil industry, the power industry, public transport, a whole range of things which should be run for people's needs, not for people's profits. And we think it's time for that change. And then even in the last few days, the situation where Richard Leonard being forced out or resigning from the leader of the Scottish Labour Party, and at least some of the MSPs from Labour saying that that's because the millionaires are now back in control of the Labour Party. And a mildly left wing, Richard Leonard would have disagreements with him in terms of some programme issues and policy issues, but certainly to the left of the current Labour leadership at a UK level appears to have been forced out for political reasons. So that's another reason that people need to get involved in trying to change things. And the meetings next week is an opportunity for people to do that.
Thanks, Brian. Now, obviously, you've laid out there quite clearly that some of the platform and policies that Scottish TUSC has been established to promote. Indeed, Scottish TUSC has stood in a number of elections over the last number of years on the issues, as you say, of public ownership, redistribution of wealth, the question of a decent living wage, trade union rights at work, and an end to the unfair and unjust capitalist system. Now, one of the issues that will dominate in this election inevitably will be the right to have a second independence referendum. What does Scottish TUSC say about that?
Well, we are absolutely clear that there should be a second independence referendum, and that is the democratic position to have, just as a Democrat, that the Scottish Parliament and the people who live in Scotland are entitled to have a say and indeed determine what their constitutional future is. So we're absolutely clear that we need to have another referendum. There's a question about how do you deliver another referendum, because Boris Johnson and his pals aren't just going to roll over, in our view. We think that the SNP need to do more than they're doing if they're going to deliver that. It can't be parliamentary, can't be legal. We don't think in terms of a strategy. There's got to be a strategy about mobilising people on the ground to then deliver a mass movement that will demand democracy, if you want to put it in that way. Yes, the courts can be used because it's constitutional. Yes, the Parliament will be used because it's a parliamentary issue. But fundamentally, to change the Tories' position on delivering a second referendum, you're going to have to build a mass movement. And we're clear about that in terms of involving trade unions and also involving working class people more generally and demanding that. But of course, the referendum is only a means to an end for people, isn't it? No, young people, working class people voted yes in the first referendum, not because they were probably that bothered about constitutional change, although for some people it may be an absolute principle. They did that because they see that Scotland has the right of self-determination, which we fundamentally agree with. But more importantly, it was about change. People don't want the system that they live in at the minute. They're looking for a way out of poverty, a way out of low pay, a way out of students not having proper support when they're in education, young people not having access to good jobs, all the range of things that people would want to change in their communities. And TUSC and the Socialists, we then say that yes, there should be an independent Scotland, but it's got to be an independent socialist Scotland. It's got to have socialist policies that actually change society. There's no point changing flags and keeping the same capitalist system. You have to move towards socialism. And we think that that's what sets us apart from the other parties that are arguing for Scottish independence, is that we say it's got to go hand in hand with socialist change. The two things are inextricably linked. They can't be separated. If you want to change society, you've got to always have socialism at the forefront of that. And we think that's a programme or an offer, as the mainstream parties would say, to people to get involved in TUSC and to get involved in terms of lending their support to the campaign and voting for us, obviously. But just as importantly, building a campaign going forward to deliver independence, yes, but to deliver a socialist Scotland, because that's what will actually change people's lives.
Great, Brian. Thanks very much for that. I think that if you want to find out more about the meetings next week, Tuesday and Wednesday evening, for Scottish TUSC supporters and all those who want to build a socialist challenge for the elections in May, you can find out all the details at the Scottish TUSC Facebook page. And the meetings will be online, of course, via Zoom because of the lockdown and the pandemic. But you can find out more there, find out more about our socialist policies and why working class people need a new mass working class party. But at least in this election, we're going to stand as widely as we can to offer that fighting socialist alternative. So go to the Scottish TUSC Facebook page. And if you're interested and you support what we want to do, then come along to the meetings next Tuesday or Wednesday. Thanks again. Cheers, Brian.
Thank you.